Hello, steady Taurus. Have you ever considered that the moment capable of changing your life may never arrive by demanding your attention? It may not come with a dramatic entrance, a sudden revelation, or a sign so obvious that everyone around you could recognize it. Sometimes it appears as a simple part of an ordinary day, quietly waiting for someone willing to slow down, observe, and notice what is different beneath the surface. The real question has never been when your life will shift, but whether you will recognize the quiet moment when change is already standing in front of you. You may have spent a long time believing that if something truly meaningful was meant for you, you would simply feel it. There would be a certainty deep within you, a feeling so clear that hesitation would disappear and every question would finally become silent. That belief can feel reassuring because it gives you the comfort of trusting your own inner compass. It is like walking a familiar trail and believing that because you know every turn, you will always know exactly where you are going. But what if the moments that matter most do not arrive with complete certainty? What if they ask you to pay attention before they give you a reason to feel completely safe? For many Taurus souls, stability becomes more than a simple preference. It becomes the foundation through which life is understood and experienced. Familiar routines, carefully built relationships, reliable choices, and paths that have already proven themselves create a sense of security that is deeply valuable. You know the strength of building something slowly and allowing trust to grow over time. Yet sometimes the same devotion to solid ground can make unfamiliar possibilities feel uncertain simply because they have not had enough time to reveal their value. The challenge is not that you cannot recognize change. The challenge is that you may wait for change to become undeniable before allowing yourself to welcome it. Imagine walking through a field you have crossed many times before. Your feet already know the path, your eyes already recognize the landscape, and your mind naturally focuses on the things that have always been there. Because everything feels familiar, there is little reason to search for something different. Yet beneath the surface, a small seed may already be breaking open. A new shoot may be rising quietly through the soil, almost invisible unless you pause long enough to notice it. Life often moves in this way. The beginnings that eventually reshape everything are rarely the loudest parts of the landscape. This brings forward a possibility that may feel uncomfortable at first. Perhaps you are not simply waiting for an opportunity that has not arrived yet. Perhaps you have already stood beside something meaningful while assuming it was just another ordinary moment. Maybe it was a conversation that seemed too simple to remember, a person who did not immediately appear extraordinary, or a decision that felt too small to deserve your full attention. The greatest turning points often arrive wearing the appearance of normal life, and that is exactly why they can be overlooked by those who are searching only for something unmistakably important. There is another layer beneath this pattern. After years of learning how to create dependable foundations, you may have become deeply skilled at asking whether the ground beneath you is stable enough to stand on. You know how to protect what matters, how to preserve what you have built, and how to avoid unnecessary disruption. But there is another question that deserves the same attention. Is the ground beneath you still allowing you to grow? A place can feel safe while quietly becoming too small for the person you are becoming. Strong roots are essential, but roots are not meant to prevent a tree from reaching upward. They exist so that growth can happen with strength and resilience. This is why meaningful change often arrives in subtle ways. It rarely announces itself through dramatic events or impossible to ignore signals. Instead, it may appear as a quiet conversation that stays with you long after it ends, a new idea that continues returning to your mind, or a familiar path that suddenly reveals a direction you never noticed before. These moments do not ask you to abandon your wisdom. They simply ask you to remain open enough to recognize that life can offer something new without destroying what already matters. So perhaps the deeper question is not how to predict the exact day when everything changes. No one can truly know that moment in advance. A more meaningful question is how to become the kind of person who notices the small movements of life before they become impossible to ignore. The answer is not found in searching for extraordinary signs or waiting for a perfect feeling of certainty. It is found in becoming more aware of your own inner landscape, the quiet places within you where curiosity, intuition, and growth begin to take shape. If these reflections feel unexpectedly familiar, there may already be a part of you recognizing a pattern that has quietly followed you through different seasons of your life. Awareness rarely arrives like a sudden storm. More often it appears like the first change in the air before a new season begins, the kind of shift that only someone paying close attention would notice. Give yourself permission to explore what that awareness is showing you instead of immediately returning to what feels comfortable. The wisdom you need may not be something waiting somewhere outside of you. It may already be growing within you, like a seed that has been beneath the soil longer than you realized. Sometimes the next chapter does not begin when the world changes around you. Sometimes it begins when you finally recognize the growth that has been quietly preparing itself inside you all along, waiting for you to trust it enough to see where it can lead. Tell me in the comments, have you ever looked back on a moment from your past and realized that something meaningful was quietly present all along, waiting for you to finally understand its place in your story? Maybe it was a conversation that seemed insignificant at the time, a person who appeared ordinary before becoming important, or a choice that felt too small to deserve deeper attention. Sometimes we only recognize the value of a moment after we have already moved beyond it, when we can finally see the small details we were unable to appreciate before. Because the moments that shape your life rarely arrive with a dramatic announcement or a clear signal telling you that everything is about to change. They do not always appear like a door suddenly opening, a path glowing in front of you, or a storm transforming the entire landscape at once. Sometimes they arrive like a familiar trail you have walked many times before, quietly carrying a new direction that only becomes visible when you slow down enough to notice the details you once passed without seeing. This is what many people misunderstand about meaningful encounters and important turning points. They expect something extraordinary to feel extraordinary from the very beginning. They imagine that the right opportunity, the right person, or the right decision should come with an undeniable feeling that removes every question and leaves no room for hesitation. They wait for a sign so clear that uncertainty disappears completely. But life often moves through quieter rhythms, through moments that ask for awareness rather than excitement. The conversation that changes the way you understand yourself may sound like a simple exchange. The person who influences the direction of your future may first appear like someone you could easily walk past without realizing the significance they carry. Sometimes what changes your life does not arrive announcing its importance. It simply enters your world, and only with time do you begin to understand why that moment mattered. Imagine someone standing in a garden waiting for the arrival of a new season by searching only for the most visible signs of transformation. They watch for the brightest flowers opening, the strongest winds moving through the trees, or the most obvious changes across the landscape. Their attention is naturally drawn toward what can be immediately seen and easily recognized. But while they are waiting for something dramatic to appear, they overlook the quiet movement beneath the soil, the first roots stretching deeper, the first seed beginning to awaken, the invisible preparation taking place long before anything rises above the surface. The garden is already changing, but the transformation is happening in a language that requires patience to understand. Growth often begins in places where the eye is least prepared to look. And some of the most important changes in life are the ones that ask you to become more present before they become more visible. So if the moment that changes everything is hidden inside ordinary life, what allows someone to recognize it when it appears? The answer is not found by searching endlessly outside yourself or waiting for the world to provide a perfect signal before you trust what you feel. It begins by becoming more aware of the quiet shifts happening within you. There are moments when something inside you responds before your thoughts have created a complete explanation. A small sense of curiosity, a subtle feeling of connection, a quiet awareness that something about a person, a place, or a decision feels different from everything you have experienced before. These moments may not arrive with certainty, but they often carry a quality of presence that invites you to pay closer attention. How many times have you encountered something new and experienced a strange sense of familiarity, as if a deeper part of you noticed its meaning before your mind could explain why? Perhaps there was a person who felt strangely significant, a place that created an unexpected sense of belonging, or a choice that stayed in your thoughts longer than you expected. And how many times have you pushed that feeling aside because it did not arrive with enough proof? Because there was no guarantee yet? Because it asked you to trust something delicate, something still forming, something that had not revealed its full shape? Sometimes we dismiss the earliest signs of growth because they do not look powerful enough in their beginning stages. We forget that even the strongest trees begin as something small enough to fit in the palm of a hand. That is where many meaningful opportunities are lost, not because they were hidden completely, but because they arrived quietly enough to be overlooked. You may have learned to trust what has already been tested, what has already survived difficulties, what has already created a sense of security and reliability. That instinct is not a weakness. It is one of the qualities that allows you to build carefully, make thoughtful decisions, and create foundations that can endure through changing seasons. But sometimes the same instinct that protects what you have built can also make you hesitate when something new begins growing beside it, especially when that new possibility has not yet had enough time to prove what it can become. There is a difference between seeing something and truly recognizing its significance. Seeing is noticing what exists in front of you. Recognition requires you to pause long enough to understand the meaning behind what you are seeing. It asks you to move beyond the immediate question of whether something perfectly fits into the life you already know. It invites you to create a small space for uncertainty, even when certainty feels safer and more familiar. Because not everything valuable arrives complete. Some things reveal their purpose slowly, like a seed unfolding beneath the earth before anyone can see the flower it may eventually become. Perhaps this is the deeper lesson hidden within these moments. The encounter that changes your life does not need to look important to everyone around you. It does not need outside approval, obvious signs, or immediate confirmation before it deserves your attention. Some of the most meaningful information comes from the quiet response within you, the part that notices a shift before the rest of your mind has finished analyzing every possibility. That inner response may not provide every answer immediately, but it may be the beginning of a question that leads you somewhere important. Sometimes awareness begins not with certainty, but with the willingness to remain curious. There is a hidden cost to always choosing what feels familiar. It is not a cost that appears suddenly or demands to be noticed. It gathers slowly, like layers of dust settling over a window that no one remembers to clean. At first, everything beyond the glass still looks recognizable, so there is no obvious reason to question what you see. But over time, the view becomes slightly less clear, and you may not realize that your perspective has gradually become shaped by what is comfortable rather than what is true. Familiarity can bring peace and protection, but familiarity alone cannot always tell you whether you are still moving in the direction where you are meant to grow. So ask yourself gently, how many moments in your life did you call stability when they were actually moments of hesitation? How many times did you remain on the same path because it was known and predictable, rather than because it was still helping you become the person you wanted to grow into? These choices rarely feel like choices while they're happening. They often feel like patience, responsibility, wisdom, or simply doing what makes the most practical sense at that moment. Only later do we sometimes recognize that we were protecting ourselves from uncertainty more than we were protecting our future. We were preserving what felt safe, even when something inside us was quietly asking for expansion. Only when you look back from a different season of your life do you sometimes notice the quiet crossroads that were waiting for you, the path you almost explored, the conversation you almost continued, the possibility you placed aside because the timing did not feel perfect, or because you were waiting for a stronger sign that everything would work out. Yet many of the most meaningful changes in life begin before we feel completely prepared. They begin when we are willing to take a small step towards something we cannot fully understand yet, trusting that clarity can sometimes appear through movement rather than before it. And if these questions feel uncomfortable, perhaps it is because they are touching something honest within you, not a mistake that needs punishment, and not a reason to judge the choices you made with the understanding you had at the time. Instead, it may simply be a pattern asking to be recognized. The purpose is not to regret the moments you missed, but to understand the way you hold on, the reasons behind it, and the moments when that protection may no longer be serving you. Because sometimes creating space for a new season does not mean leaving behind everything that has supported you. It means honoring your roots while allowing yourself to grow beyond the place where you first took root, reaching toward experiences, connections, and possibilities that have been quietly waiting for your attention. Recognizing your own patterns, even when they are uncomfortable to face, is where meaningful change begins. Sometimes the habits that quietly limit us are the same ones that once helped us feel protected. For Taurus, this reflection is not about abandoning your need for stability or rejecting the foundations you have carefully built. It is about noticing when the desire for security has slowly become a reason to remain in places, relationships, or choices that no longer allow you to grow. There is a difference between honoring your roots and refusing to let them reach deeper into new soil. A tree does not lose its strength because it grows new branches. It remains grounded while still responding to the changing seasons around it. In the same way, your sense of stability becomes more powerful when it supports movement, instead of quietly keeping you in the same landscape forever. Now, I want to invite you into a moment of honest reflection. Think about a time in your life when something meaningful appeared in front of you, but you decided to wait. Maybe it was a person who sparked a feeling you could not explain. Maybe it was an opportunity that required you to step beyond what felt predictable. Maybe it was simply a different path that appeared before you were ready to leave the one you already knew. Imagine looking through an old journal, walking through a familiar place from your past, and suddenly noticing something you had overlooked. A small detail that was always there. A sign of growth that existed quietly in the background while your attention remained focused on what felt certain and easy to understand. Sometimes the most important parts of our story are not hidden because they are invisible. They are hidden because we were not yet ready to look at them differently. And if this has happened before, what makes you certain it is not happening again? While listening to this, consider how many times you have told yourself that the timing was not right, that you needed more information, that you should wait until everything felt completely secure before taking the next step. Perhaps it was a connection that could have deepened, a possibility that asked for courage, or a choice that carried just enough uncertainty to make you hesitate. The interesting thing is that these decisions rarely feel like fear when we are making them. They often feel responsible. They feel thoughtful. They feel like patience and wisdom. Only later, when we stand farther away and look back, do we sometimes recognize that what we called caution was also a way of protecting ourselves from the unknown. This is not about blaming yourself for the roads you did not take. It is about becoming aware of the pattern behind those moments. Because patterns are rarely loud. They repeat quietly, almost like the changing of seasons, until one day you finally notice that the landscape around you has shifted and you have been standing in the same place. Take a moment and allow a specific memory to come forward, not to remain trapped in the past, but to understand the shape of your hesitation. What does it usually look like when you hold back? What reason do you give yourself? What story do you tell yourself before deciding that staying where you are is safer than exploring what is calling you forward? Perhaps a person, a place, or a possibility has already appeared in your mind. If so, that may simply be your awareness recognizing a familiar pattern. The same inner response that once caused you to pause may appear again in a different form, asking you the same question in a new season of your life. Real growth is not about destroying the foundation you have built. It is about learning when that foundation is strong enough to support expansion. True inner strength does not come from avoiding every uncertain path. It comes from trusting yourself enough to walk into new terrain while still carrying the wisdom of where you began. And perhaps this is the most difficult part of the journey. The moment that changes everything may require you to loosen your attachment to the very thing you value most, certainty. Growth can feel unsettling because it asks you to step beyond the familiar landscape where you have always known how to move. It is like standing at the edge of a field after a long winter. The frozen ground may feel safe because you understand it. You know where every step belongs. But beneath that surface, life is already preparing for something new. The first signs of change are often quiet, almost invisible, waiting for the person who is willing to notice that the season is beginning to turn. What if the uncertainty you have been trying so hard to avoid is not a warning that something is wrong? What if it is simply the feeling of something new, asking to be acknowledged? Perhaps the sign you have been waiting for was never meant to arrive as complete certainty. Perhaps it was always meant to appear as a small inner movement, a question, a curiosity, a quiet pull towards something you have not fully understood yet. The truth is, the moments that reshape your life rarely arrive in the way you expect them to. They do not always appear as a clear answer, a perfect opportunity, or a feeling of complete certainty. Sometimes they arrive as a quiet tension you cannot explain, a hesitation that appears when you are standing near something unfamiliar, or a moment of silence that feels strangely meaningful because you do not know what to do with it. For a long time, you may have believed that discomfort was a sign to step away, that if something disturbed your sense of stability, it must mean something was wrong. So you returned to what was known, what was predictable, what had already proven itself safe. But there is another possibility that is much harder to accept. Perhaps some forms of discomfort are not asking you to leave. Perhaps they are asking you to pay attention. The things that truly transform us rarely enter our lives without creating some kind of movement inside. Even when nothing changes on the outside, something within you begins to shift. A question appears, a feeling lingers, a small part of you starts wondering whether there is more waiting beyond the boundaries of what you have always known. This may be one of the hardest lessons for Taurus to embrace. Stability was never meant to mean that nothing ever changes. A strong foundation is not valuable because it prevents all movement. It is valuable because it allows you to stand firmly while life continues to evolve around you. A deeply rooted tree does not remain unchanged forever. It grows, stretches, loses old leaves, and welcomes new seasons while still remaining connected to where it began. Perhaps the uncertainty you feel right now is not a sign that you are moving in the wrong direction. Perhaps it is simply the feeling of stepping into a new landscape before you understand every detail of the path ahead. The unknown can feel uncomfortable because it does not offer the same guarantees as the familiar. But sometimes the places where you grow the most are the places where you cannot rely only on what you have already experienced. This is why waiting for complete certainty can become its own kind of limitation. Life rarely hands us a finished map before we begin walking. More often, understanding arrives after we take the first step. The seed does not know the entire shape of the tree it will become. It simply responds to the conditions around it and begins to grow. If this feeling is present within you now, do not rush to dismiss it. Taurus often has the patience to wait, but sometimes that same patience can become a reason to postpone what the heart already recognizes. Some realizations become quieter when ignored, not because they were unimportant, but because we become skilled at placing them somewhere out of sight. The path toward a more meaningful life is not about destroying everything you have built. It is about recognizing when your foundation has become strong enough to support something new. You do not have to choose between peace and growth. You do not have to abandon who you are in order to become who you are becoming. True security does not come from keeping every season the same. It comes from trusting that you can move through changing seasons and still remain whole. The strongest roots are not the ones that refuse change. They are the ones deep enough to support new branches reaching toward unfamiliar light. In the end, perhaps the greatest shift is understanding that you may never be able to predict the exact moment when everything changes. No sign, no outside force, and no perfect timing can reveal every turning point before it arrives. What you can do is become more aware of your own inner landscape, so you recognize the quiet beginnings of change when they appear. The moment that transforms your life may already have passed close to you, disguised as an ordinary conversation, a familiar place, or a choice that seemed too small to matter. Or perhaps it is still waiting somewhere ahead, arriving not with noise or certainty, but with a subtle invitation to see something differently. What changes from this point forward is not necessarily the world around you. It is your willingness to notice what is growing beneath the surface. It is the decision to exchange the comfort of always needing proof for the deeper wisdom of learning to recognize what is quietly unfolding. Taurus has always understood the value of stability. Perhaps now is the time to explore the equally powerful value of transformation, because a life that never changes cannot fully reveal everything it was meant to become.